On the evening of March 9, 1945, the tropical sun dipped toward the horizon over the captured islands of the Marianas, Guam, Saipan, and Tinian, casting long shadows across American airfields where hundreds of B-29 Superfortress bombers sat gleaming in the fading light. Ground crews moved swiftly across the vast concrete runways, performing last-minute checks, tightening bolts, and fueling these colossal machines that represented the pinnacle of wartime engineering. Major General Curtis LeMay, recently appointed commander of the 21st Bomber Command, had orchestrated what would become the most radical shift in the air campaign against Japan. Low-level nighttime incendiary raids designed to break the back of Japanese urban and industrial infrastructure. The mission's target was the Shitamachi district of Tokyo, a densely packed working-class neighborhood where nearly 750,000 people lived in wooden homes tightly clustered into 12 square miles. Each B-29's bomb bay, stripped of most defensive armaments to allow maximum payload, was filled with cluster bombs containing 1,520 M69 incendiary bomblets, each capable of burning at 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit and designed to ignite multiple points across the urban landscape. At precisely 5:35 p.m., the first silver bomber lifted from Guam's North Field, its four Wright R-3350 engines roaring as it climbed into the gathering darkness. One by one, the 325 bombers took off, flying individually rather than in formation, each carrying 7 tons of incendiary payload instead of the usual high explosives. Pathfinder aircraft led the operation, dropping flares and M47 napalm bombs to mark the target with glowing excess visible from miles away, while the main bomber force followed, navigating at altitudes of 5,000 to 7,000 feet, far below their operational ceiling, trading defensive capability for destructive power. The stage was set for an inferno unlike anything the world had seen. The B-29 itself was a marvel of human ingenuity and industrial capacity. Over 1.4 million man-hours went into its design, and it cost $3 billion to produce, surpassing even the Manhattan Project. Pressurized crew compartments, remote-controlled gun turrets, and the most powerful piston engines of the era allowed the aircraft to carry 20,000 pounds of bombs over 1,600 miles at speeds up to 357 miles per hour. Its wingspan stretched 141 feet, longer than many city blocks, and its engineering excellence demanded equally meticulous manufacturing, with Boeing producing bombers in Seattle and Wichita, the Glenn L. Martin Company in Omaha, and Bell Aircraft in Marietta, Georgia. By March 1945, roughly 2,000 B-29s had been delivered to combat units, a number that would eventually reach nearly 4,000 by the end of the war. Every bomber was maintained by crews working tirelessly around the clock, ensuring engines were tuned, hydraulics operational, and bombs secured, even as the tropical heat and humidity tested men and machines alike. In contrast, Japan's defenses were fragmented and inadequate. Night fighter units operated under separate Army and Navy command structures with minimal coordination, limited communication, and insufficient radar. Only a handful of Nakajima J-1N Gecko and Kawasaki Ki-45 Dragon killer night fighters were available, most with little operational experience and minimal ammunition. Anti-aircraft guns were few in number and lacked fire control radar, relying instead on optical rangefinders and sound detection systems that became ineffective under low visibility conditions or against fast-moving bombers. Fuel shortages grounded many aircraft, while pilot training suffered, leaving the Japanese home islands with a largely impotent air defense system. Civilian fire brigades, composed mainly of women, elderly, and teenagers, were equipped with hand pumps, buckets, and sand, entirely unprepared to meet the scale of destruction about to descend. Previous high-altitude precision raids had failed repeatedly. Jet streams reaching 200 miles per hour scattered bombs across neighborhoods, clouds obscured targets, and engines strained under heavy payloads. LeMay, analyzing these failures, concluded that a new approach was required. By removing defensive guns, flying at lower altitudes, and relying on incendiaries, He sought to maximize the destructive effect while reducing mechanical failures and exposure to Japanese fighters. Weather forecasts predicted clear skies and surface winds between 17 and 28 miles per hour, ideal for spreading fire, while gusts up to 45 miles per hour would amplify the conflagration. The operational plan combined careful intelligence analysis with meticulous meteorology, using maps of Tokyo's neighborhoods to identify areas of dense wooden construction and embedded small workshops producing essential war materials. The M69 Incendiary bomblet, a 3-inch by 20-inch hexagonal device containing napalm gel developed by Standard Oil and Harvard scientists, represented the pinnacle of chemical engineering in warfare. Deployed in clusters of 38 per bomb, the bomblets separated at 2,000 feet, deploying cotton streamers to orient their fuses downward. Upon impact, the time-delayed mechanism ignited a phosphorus charge, scattering napalm across buildings and ensuring maximum fire spread. Each B-29 carried 40 clusters, translating to more than 1,500 incendiary devices per aircraft. By the time the raid commenced, 279 of the 325 bombers would reach the target, collectively delivering over 424,000 individual incendiaries onto northeastern Tokyo. At 12:08 a.m. on March 10th, Pathfinder aircraft arrived over the city, dropping markers that glowed in the night and guiding the main force into position. The first clusters hit, igniting multiple fires that merged almost instantly into a massive inferno. Temperatures at ground level soared, melting glass and igniting asphalt, while superheated air generated violent updrafts, lifting debris and creating wind vortices that spread flames across streets and alleys. Residents fled in panic. Yoshiko Hashimoto, a 24-year-old mother, recalled clutching her 13-month-old child as she and her parents attempted to navigate burning neighborhoods, witnessing family members perish as fire and debris overtook streets. Fire brigades were powerless. Water systems failed, pumps broke, and wooden fire breaks offered no protection. Even concrete air raid shelters proved insufficient against the heat and smoke. Within hours, Tokyo's eastern districts were unrecognizable. Over 100,000 people had died, tens of thousands were injured, and more than 1 million were left homeless. Approximately 267,000 buildings across 15.8 square miles were destroyed, erasing centuries of urban and industrial infrastructure. Skilled workers, machinists, and craftsmen who had supported essential industries were killed, displaced, or scattered, creating long-term disruptions in Japan's industrial output. 4 American air crews, witnessing the firestorms from above, left lasting psychological impressions, even as only 14 B-29s were lost, with 96 airmen killed or missing. The operation demonstrated the decisive advantage of industrial capacity and technological superiority, showing that the United States could replace aircraft and weapons quickly, while Japan lacked the means to rebuild even portions of its destroyed cities. The raid also had profound strategic and psychological implications. It accelerated the collapse of Japanese resistance, informed the planning of Operation Downfall, and influenced President Truman's decision-making regarding the use of atomic weapons, demonstrating that sustained conventional bombing could inflict catastrophic casualties and infrastructure loss. Survivor testimonies revealed decades-long trauma, disrupted family structures, and the collapse of neighborhood networks in Shitamachi. The operation highlighted the moral complexities of modern warfare. Advanced technology and meticulous planning allowed military objectives to justify enormous civilian suffering, raising questions that continue to resonate in discussions of strategic bombing and international law. Operation Meeting House would not be an isolated event. Within days, similar incendiary raids struck Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe, systematically degrading Japan's industrial and urban fabric. By the summer of 1945, incendiary operations had become routine, with air crews distributing leaflets to warn civilians and demonstrate American air superiority, further undermining civilian morale. Japanese defenses grew increasingly ineffective as pilots were lost, ammunition depleted, and firefighting infrastructure collapsed. The scientific, methodical integration of meteorology, chemistry, and military intelligence contrasted sharply with Japanese defensive doctrine, emphasizing traditional values over technological adaptation, leaving the home islands vulnerable to continued destruction. The legacy of Operation Meeting House extends beyond the physical devastation. Beyond the over 100,000 fatalities, the raid permanently altered the social, industrial, and psychological landscape of Tokyo, dispersing extended families, eliminating centuries-old businesses, and destroying neighborhoods that had existed for generations. The scale of destruction and human loss influenced the ultimate surrender of Japan, accelerated by the recognition that continued resistance against superior industrial and technological power would prove futile. For historians, military strategists, and ethicists, the raid serves as a stark illustration of modern warfare's capacity for destruction, the integration of science into military planning, and the enduring human cost when strategic objectives justify mass civilian casualties. The B-29s that carried sophisticated incendiary devices thousands of miles to their targets, the Japanese civilians caught unprepared, and the meticulous planning behind every aspect of the raid together exemplify the complex interplay between technology, strategy, and humanity in total war. Operation Meeting House remains history's most destructive air raid, not merely as a military achievement, but as a sobering reminder of modern conflict's potential to obliterate cities, devastate populations, and leave legacies of suffering that endure far beyond the battlefield.